you were good afternoon. If any of you have any questions about the Heber Valley Railroad, I'd be happy to try and answer them, but I'll just say very quickly that the Heber Valley Railroad is an independent agency of the state of Utah. We don't receive any ongoing operational funding from the state of Utah or anyone else, and we operate year-round and give people rides. What I wanted to say in the previous slide, the railroad's motto is great experiences await. And I just wanted to mention as we talk about strategy, that what I think the Heber Valley Railroad sells, if you will, are experiences. And we want people to come from all over the world and have great experiences on the train. And so keep that in mind as we go through these the next slide. So we're going to talk about preserving the Heber Valley Railroad. Yeah, the one before was just kind of the outline. So I'm going to talk about preserving the Heber Valley Railroad experience, how to grow it, and how we will develop the property and the experience. So first, to preserve it, the past.
This one?
Yeah, there we go. So the Heber Valley Railroad this past year that just ended had revenues of just about $1.8 million and net operating profit of about $250,000, a little more than that. And I mentioned that because the Heber Valley Railroad the last 2 or 3 years has sustained itself, is self-sustained from an operational point of view, but not from an overall health of the business, and I'll explain what that means. But in terms of giving people rides and collecting enough money to pay the bills, we've been doing that more or less for the past 3 years. We have recently formed Heber Valley Railroad Foundation, a 501c3, and have a separate advisory board to manage that foundation and hope that they will help us solve some of these longer-term and strategic financial problems that we have, or challenges that we have. And most of those center themselves around infrastructure and capital costs. Last January, I went before the Transportation Commission of the state and suggested to them that the Heber Valley Railroad will need about $2 million in the next 5 years for track repairs and maintenance. And that's something that we can't fund in the business model that we're operating on right now. And we'll talk more later about other capital costs that the Heber Valley Railroad needs to grow and develop. And in our current model, again, we don't generate the funds to purchase new cars and do things like that we need to do. As far as preserving the business, if you will, of the Heber Valley Railroad, which I think is in everyone's best interest, we rely on these critical relationships with you, with Heber City, with Wasatch County, with Utah State Parks and UDOT, who own the land that are the right-of-way we lease from them and the tracks are on. Many of these organizations have literally kept us alive for the last 3 or 4 years, and before my time, I'm sure many occasions before that, in helping to bridge the gap from some of those infrastructure and other capital costs that were at any given moment outside the financial ability of the railroad. Finally, to preserve the railroad, we have some property and equipment issues that we just have to fund in order to preserve this as a business, and we can talk some more about those. This past year that just ended, we carried 80,000 passengers. If we were to increase that by 20,000 passengers, that would represent about $500,000 of additional revenue and about $250,000 to $300,000 of additional margin of profit. I think the last time, or one of the times that I presented to this council before, and certainly you, Mayor McDonald, who's on the board, knows that this time of year, January through April, the Heber Valley Railroad this time of year, and then we make that up later in the year. But if we could grow the passenger base by 20,000 or more, we would almost fill that gap in. And so we have a very, very serious goal to grow the number of passengers we carry. And here are some of the ways we're going to do that. There are trail plans underway to put a trail in the railroad's right-of-way from the depot to Soldier Hollow, and then another trail in the works to put a trail from Deer Creek Dam to Vivian Park. If and when those happen, that will increase the railroad's traffic and ridership substantially. And we have some things we need to do to prepare for that and to be able to accommodate that. But that's something that we're very aggressively a part of those plans and meetings and discussions and trying to encourage that to happen. I've mentioned track maintenance. Part of these trails proposals includes discussion about dollars for improvements and revision to the tracks alongside those trails. And we hope that if and when those trail projects happen, that some funds will also be available to help with that. I've listed 4 things under equipment. One is a first-class car, also steam locomotives, bicycles, and dining. Those are also all things that the Heber Valley Railroad currently doesn't have. And I won't take the time to talk about each one of them, but all of those would add $50,000 to $150,000 a year in revenue to the railroad and increase its exposure. Those are all things that we need to grow. We will have one of the steam locomotives out later this year. We are working with the Heber Valley Railroad Foundation on funding to buy a car that we can sell first-class tickets with. We have a car we're working on that will be a bicycle carrier, which would be very popular, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. I think you probably all know what turntables are, not the record player kind, but the train kind. We're going to talk about those and a roundhouse in just a minute. I'm also going to mention developing the property. We're on a very small little triangle of property. I'm going to show you a map in just a minute, but there are many things that we would like to do to develop that property, which will enhance this experience and make more people want to come and stay longer and be a part of the Heber Valley Railroad. We are working on a master plan that includes some historic buildings that will be on the property, and a water tower of the kind that was happening around the 1900s and 1920s. We have a switch tower that I don't have time to tell you about. It will be the only one west of the Mississippi when we erect. We have it in a property. We just need to put it up. That will draw many people. And I'll talk about the right-of-way in a minute, but let's just get ahead of it. So a turntable is something that was built for a steam locomotive to drive onto and turn it around to the other end. In the past, when the Heber Creeper has gone down to Vivian Park and back, it's always gone down backwards and then come back forward. And a turntable would allow us to swap those. The Heber Valley Railroad owns 2 turntables. This is a concept map that was done by Utah County as part of these trails discussions, and is a map of Vivian Park and shows the park developed with an option for a turntable up here on the, you can see where it is, that would allow on the existing property a turntable to be installed, and then the steam locomotive could come back and be facing the correct way, both ways. That would also be a significant tourist draw and cause all kinds of parking problems and other problems at Vivian Park, which already has parking problems. But anyway, that's something that's a concept that we're doing part of. A roundhouse, and you'll see in this picture there's a turntable, and around it there are a bunch of tracks going into a roundhouse. So those were originally designed and built primarily to store the steam locomotives and keep them out of the weather and have a place where they work on. The photograph, the picture, 2 pictures below are pictures of existing roundhouses that are used for exhibit space and meetings and events and things like that. And this is a concept drawing from part of the trails, and this is a picture. The orange triangle, it represents approximately the Heber Valley Railroad's property. You can see the existing event center buildings over on this other side, and down there in the middle, you can see where there's a turntable and a roundhouse drawn in. This is a concept that we've been discussing with Wasatch County, with Heber Light and Power, and anyone who will listen, that Wasatch County is interested in an event space, in an exhibit building or an event building, and we think and would like to try and get in everyone's thinking and master plans the possibility of someday there being a turntable there and a roundhouse that would be owned and or shared some way with Wasatch County and would be that exhibit space, but would have really cool old train cars inside as backdrop and be part of the whole theme thing. Just for interest, the red square is the approximate footprint of the new Heber Light and Power substation that is being discussed. And I agree. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
I have a question. So that red square, it's not just the white part, is that entire red square is anticipated for that substation?
Yes.
So there's a conflict here that we're not talking about, and we all need to talk about it, because I think this is something we should bring to the community and have, I don't know if I understand there's not a hearing or any kind of a requirement for Heber Light and Power to build that substation, but I feel like as a city, we have an interest in this amazing potential for this area where we could see this kind of activity with people coming on the trains and the bikes and the trails, and we don't have very many opportunities like that in Heber City, and we would be foolish to miss out on the tourism and the people that are coming here for other things and would come here specifically for this. So, when we first had this presentation, one of the Lithgows who said they helped with that said they talked to Heber Light and Power and said it was not too late to do that substation. But since then, I haven't been able to, maybe the mayor can inform us on the status of that.
Yeah, what we're waiting for is they proposal from the county. The county holds the key what they would want to do with the property there. Until they come with a hard written proposal, what their suggestions, what they'd like to do with the property, then we can decide what to do with that substation at that particular point. As far as that's the words of James Square, I would say that's probably not, maybe close, it's not completely accurate because it still hasn't been engineered exactly where it's going to go. Right. So that's still up to the engineers and Rocky Mountain Power has a big input on that to go into it too. But the county needs to step forward and say, look, this is our proposal, this is the ground we need, this is what we can do, and then we can decide to provide power what we're going to do to that substation.
Okay, so I'm just saying, I feel like we should have a requirement as a city. I know other cities have this, I've done a little research, that they would have to have a public hearing to put a substation there, even if it's permitted within the zoning, because I feel like there's a community interest there. And so I know the county would decide, but I feel like we should have some requirement. That's something I'd like us to discuss as a city, to have a requirement for that to become a public process before they can put that substation.
May I also ask a question?
Yes, I do have the floor.
What is the green area directly north? I cannot read the writing. It's just north of the Heber Light and Power Company buildings. There's a dotted line, grassy green area, and I cannot read what that says. Can anyone explain that to me?
Is that the Cowboy Village?
I can. It's the existing Cowboy Village, and that's again, this is a concept drawing from many months ago, several months ago. And at the time, that little white building parking lot was a new Heber Light Power offices, I believe.
Right. That's the one that's right on the road.
But
correct.
again, I don't think do that.
No, it's still up to the county where they want to do. I mean, there's some lands they want to purchase from Heber Light and Power, but no one's made a proposal to us yet.
Right.
Still, I can't make a decision with county until they decide what they want to do with their property, what they want to redevelop.
Well, couldn't that be switched? Could the substation be put up where the Cowboy Village is and vice versa?
I guess you could put it anywhere you want to, but what goes with it is the cost. And
Yes.
determine what the cost is worth it or not. And we also consider, for the trails and for the railroad, we have to run a company business, so it's practical for the company business, we should come first.
No, I understand that. It's just if we're going
No,
to
it
pump
shouldn't.
this money and millions of dollars into trying to make this a jewel for the valley, which it will be for generations to come. I mean, it's incredible legacy, it's incredible vision, I think. I just think that it's very hard to attract tourists to a substation with buzzing and high cement walls and the view. So if that could be moved, if there's any way to move it, that would protect the potential that's here. And that would be a wonderful thing. Along with, as I talked about in the strategic planning meeting, we've got to think about that 138 kV line coming through here, coming right down this road in front of the railroad, and how we can make sure that that doesn't block the view or dissuade tourists from coming to something that could be just incredible.
You're probably more concerned than I do. I think those lines are pretty attractive to me. But anyway, that's open for another discussion.
Well, Mayor, this is something I agree with Kelly on. I think that we need to explain the situation to the public and see if they are willing to support some extra city budget spending towards helping this project. Whether it's subdivision costs, whether it's burying that line. I think that this is something that everyone on the city would love to see go forward.
You cannot bury a 138 kV line in the ground. It's not feasible. So that's not an option.
Now, is that actually an engineering view?
That's correct. Talking to Heber Light and Power staff, it's not feasible for the 138 kV line underground. But anyway, that's the day that Mr. Wilson, thank you.
As I recall, a couple of years ago, Harold Wilson said it was possible that it would cost money.
Yeah, the money that's also, we bury the line is 3 or 4 times the money that's go underground and over the top. They were moving on to the next option.
I understand that.
The council, I sent up a regular meeting to council